So today's topic is personal inventory. And for folks that may not be familiar with a personal inventory, the idea for this episode came from the fourth step. And so in the fourth step, in a 12-step program in AA or in any other 12-step program, you take a fearless personal moral inventory of yourself. And the way this usually works is it's quite systematic. There's columns. In our first column, we might write, for example, our gripes or our resentments, people that have wronged us, people, places, and things or ideas.
First column is the person. The second is the gripes.
Okay. So, okay. So
did I throw you off?
Well, I was like, do I say something snide and like cutting, or do I just move on? So I don't know why.
Go ahead and try to say something snide. No, go ahead.
So I'm in a really good mood today. I think
go ahead.
That is contributing to my being all over the place. Okay, so the first or second column, or both of those columns, will be like the person, place, or thing that you might have the resentment for. So what that might look like is, I'm angry at my mother because of X, or I'm angry at toxic masculinity, or I'm angry at political systems, or I'm angry at something that happened to me at childhood, right? And then you then systematically go through that. And then, like you ask yourself, did it impact my self-esteem, my financial security, my emotional security?
And that's the third column. The third column is what did it affect?
Yeah, what did it affect? And then after what did it affect, it's your part, right?
Yeah, it's my part. It's like,
so
because that's the thing. It was like the whole thing is like folks, even with the fear, they get excited about being able to list all their resentments and everything. Yeah, I'm gonna have a moment to tear people down, and then we pull the rug out from under you, and you get to face your part in it, because we always have a part.
Right,
that's the goal.
And I would phrase that differently. I would say that when we go through that last column, what we're really doing is we're empowering you to take control of the things that at one time may have felt like they were controlling you. Okay. Yeah. So
wow. Okay,
well, I'm like, I'm thinking about like people who may be new to recovery.
Well, also I'm thinking about people who may be new to recovery, and a lot of times, we're joking about this, but sometimes it's like, if I approach you and I don't trust you to begin with, and you're blowing smoke up my ass, or at least it seems like you're blowing smoke up my ass, that's not going to make it hard for me to digest what you're sharing with me.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
So that's where this conversation comes from. And 12-step, the fourth step specifically, there's a very systematic way of taking a fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Mm-hmm. That being said, if you're not in 12-step, a personal inventory could be just looking at patterns in your life that are no longer serving you. So for example, if you deal with envy or jealousy, or if you deal with anger, right? Like one of the ways that you can take an inventory is identifying other times in your life. I don't know what he's doing. Identifying other times in your life where there may be patterns or something like that, where these behaviors have come up. Okay, so that's the premise of today's discussion: is a fearless personal moral inventory or personal inventory. Like, what are the benefits? How can you do it? Where do you start? Like, etc.
Yeah.
So what was your experience with your first fourth step?
Well, my first fourth step, I believe that, like I've shared, that I kind of came in as a people pleaser. Like I was thinking, oh God, I really want to be here and I don't want to do anything wrong. So if I don't do this a certain way, they're going to ask me to leave. So, but it was thorough. It was really thorough. And it was kind of interesting because, like, I don't know if anyone can relate to, like, in the cartoons where you have the stampede and you see the dust coming and whatever. And that's kind of how my existence was before. I did not look back. I was just like the stampede, this tornado going through, and I didn't have to look back. I didn't think I was going to have to like readdress the things that I made. That's why it was easy to kind of make some of the decisions I made. So I was in treatment at the time. I was in a behavioral modification program, acceptance place. I don't know that it's still in the city. And I had gone into the program thinking, I'm going to get along with everybody and all this stuff. And I started working on my fourth step, and I became irritable. And and what I realize now, I was bringing up stuff that, just I didn't think it had an effect on me, but it did. And so it was tough. But I got a little relief when it was done, not like the major relief sometimes that they talk about, but yeah, it was a process, and I had an amazing sponsor. We this individual walked through, and I think that's the key. Even if you're not in 12 step, I think that sometimes it's important to have someone that you trust, someone, a closed mouth, someone that you can talk to about the process, so that it's almost like having a spiritual guide you through a meditation or whatever, so that you are focusing on the right things. Because what I know to be true is, like, the sick mind couldn't heal the sick mind. So it's like I didn't know what to look for, and it probably would not have been a thorough inventory. It would have maybe have been a self-serving kind of like fact-finding mission. And these were the areas, and this is why. And so, yeah.
Yeah, you bring up an important point, which is a personal inventory is, in my opinion, not something that you should do by yourself, right? I think the other thing that's like really important to note here is that the steps are in order. So if you're doing 12 step, you're not doing it by yourself, you're doing it with a sponsor, and that's important. And if you're not doing for like a 12-step program, you're doing it with someone you trust, right? Like maybe a therapist or like a trusted friend or mentor. But the steps are in order for a reason, right? So you aren't just rehashing things to like re-traumatize yourself. You're rehashing things so you can identify patterns, so that you can then address those patterns later on in the steps, right? So I just want to put out that caveat. Okay, so that's the other thing. The other thing you said that I really appreciate is like going to your brain, like trying to make sense of things. One of my favorite things that my sponsor says is you can't go to the problem looking for the solution, and the problem's in the mind, right? I've heard that a couple times this week, and that's certainly something that like I have to remind myself of. In the 10 step, it says, we're constantly taking an inventory. So we're taking a daily inventory. And in 12 and 12, it says, and we're careful not to, actually, I think it's in the big book, we're careful not to like have morbid sick reflections. Right. And what that means is like when you're rehashing or you're looking back at things, the goal is not to beat yourself up about the things that you're angry about. The goal is to collect those stories or collect those experiences, identify them, use it as data, as a way to heal yourself in the future. And I want to talk a little bit about like what that healing process is like, right? One of the most important things that I want to talk about is like, what about those resentments that feel justified, right? So like, for example, I hear some of the sadder stories that I've heard have been around like rape or physical abuse, right? And a person might say to themselves, well, wait a minute, like I'm justified in my anger. Like one of the things I have on mine is like racism, right? And white supremacy. And I'm like, I'm justified in my anger. Like this is something that is fucking like shitty,
Absolutely.
And one of the hard things that I had to accept when I was doing my 4th step in the very beginning, so these two thoughts are separate. When I did my first 4th step, what I realized that I did a lot of was like, I had a lot of self-pity. And I had gotten stuck into this narrative about talking to myself in like this way that like, oh, look how horrible the world has treated me, right? And this was the story I was constantly telling myself. And I thought like, there's nothing wrong with that. These things have actually happened. But here was my part. My part was in holding on to that anger, And so when we're talking about delicate situations, there is a way that we can use a situation that was really shitty and we can use that to further abuse ourselves, right? And so no one is saying, for example, that, we have to accept, well, let me rephrase that. I don't think the 4th step or anyone is asking someone to like, to be okay with like a horrible transgression.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? But I think the point that like we drive at with the 4th step is, and I shouldn't say we, I think the goal of the 4th step is to free you of suffering, right? So what are those things that you are holding on to, either behaviors or ideas that are keeping you in a painful state?
So what was your,
Yeah, I'm listening.
So it's like, what was your experience with the 4th step?
Yeah, so thank you for asking.
Yeah, your first, yeah.
Yeah, so God, you're asking me a question.
Well, I want.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
So So, talking about self-pity.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
So when my first fourth step, I felt like like I don't feel like I did a very good job, but like, no, whatever. I did my first fourth step. I remember being very angry. I remember there were a lot of relationships I was listing on there. It was a lot of childhood stuff. And I didn't feel the relief when I did the fifth step the way like I felt the fourth and the fifth step when I was doing them in slaw. But I think it's not because of the nature of the programs. I just think because I didn't throw everything at it.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
You threw what you could. It's like I think my first sponsor, one of the best things he told me is like he used the analogy of like, okay, so if I go into and my barn is completely a mess and I clean up at least 75% of it, I've still done something.
Right.
You know, I can still get some relief.
Right.
I also think based on like a lot of things that's happening now is that you threw what you could at the time because some things you weren't ready to throw. Like as much as I want to believe that I could do a thorough, if I'm not even accepting it, if I'm not accepting something or if I'm not aware of it, because I think that awareness is a big part of it, then it's like I do the best that I can. And that's why the fourth step is not just a one-time deal. It is that we do it and we do it frequently.
Right. That's such an important point. Thank you for saying that. I 100% agree. I think one of the things there was a share at a meeting a couple weeks ago that I really liked, and one of the things that he was talking about was that when he was doing his step work, that like he didn't really kind of like do it the best way, And I remember thinking to myself, and I said this at the meeting, that like I think that, but that's the magic, I think, of step work or doing anything, right? The magic is that like if you just have like a little bit of willingness, if you're just willing to do a little bit, you know what I mean? Like that's enough. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I think that willingness and like I think like the little efforts they build on each other, and I was talking to a friend today at work, and she was identifying like some relationship stuff that that was pretty loud. We forgot to close the windows. But the
yeah, but
Stephanie, we're gonna hear it.
But that breeze is nice.
That breeze is really nice. So what was I saying? Oh, so I was talking to a friend today, and we were talking about attachment styles. Maybe that should be an episode for another time. But we were talking about like attachment styles, and she has some stuff coming up. And I said, listen, like just you like getting to a point where like you have some awareness around something, that's like a really good start. Like you don't have to go like rushing into any kind of like deep diving into your like trauma, etc.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that was my experience. But like my experience in SLAW, so Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, my experience there has been very meaningful and very transformative. But that's because I literally threw everything I had at it. Like I was so intentional. But part of that is because I was in so much pain.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I was like, I can't keep fucking coming up against this stuff. And that's what's been really amazing about that. Now that I'm kind of talking about it, is that I'm addressing things, for example, for the first time in my life. And that has been very difficult.
Oh yeah.
There have certainly been nights where I'm like crying on the phone. They're like, I'm curled up into a ball, like, and that's been really difficult. But I'm telling, like, I can tell you honestly that it's been like the most remarkable, the best like work that I've been doing for myself. And I'm still in the middle of it. Yeah. But I wanted to talk about like some of the defects that have come up for me in early recovery. So, and they still exist. So making others my higher power, so that was one. Anger, self-pity, jealousy, envy, hypocrisy,
self-righteousness.
Oh,
I was thinking about that for myself.
That's so funny. There was this one time I had this friend, he goes, Anthony, I want to talk to you about something. And I'm like, what? And he goes, okay, what am I really bad at? And I go, listening. He goes, no, not that. I go, cleaning up after yourself. He's like, no, not that. And I'm like, girl, we are...
We'll be here all day.
We'd be here all day. Like, why don't you just tell me what you want before I like go down this laundry list of like issues I have with our living arrangement. Okay. What were we talking about?
We were talking about your character
Oh
defects.
yeah. So hypocrisy, being controlling.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the ones that come up for me. Self-pity was the big one. Anger is the big one.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. You were talking about before, and for folks who are working the steps are in order for a reason. In this very room we're at, I remember it was a Saturday meeting. There was a woman, she was sharing on step 3, and she said that when I turned my will, step 3 is turning your will and your lives over to the care of a higher power or God of your understanding. And my sponsor breaks it down to say your will being your thinking and your life being your actions. Okay. And so the very next day,
Can you say that again?
Yeah. So
your will being your thinking.
So my will is my thinking, and my life is my actions. And so the very next day, my higher power showed up with a wrecking ball. And the 4th step is, and I had something to read. Can you believe it?
Oh gosh.
So step 4 is the beginning of the demolition process that prepared me for society. And also, one of the benefits from taking a personal inventory is that we don't have to wait for someone else to tell us who we are or how we are. And then what I talk to sponsees about is it's like the 4th step is the beginning of, okay, now the police department, the fire department said we can go back in and check on the wreckage. And we're going in and sorting through the wreckage and figuring out what is salvageable and what's not salvageable.
Right.
And it's and just like with that, there's no judgment in it. It's just an opportunity to see what we have, what we have in stock, so that we can get ready to move forward with things that aren't going to weight us down heavily.
What book is that?
This comes from Living Clean, The Journey Continues. This is actually an NA approved book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, exactly. It's really nice.
Yeah. So folks listening, if you have any comments, any experiences, any thoughts that you want to share with us, please chime in. We have a comment. Let's see it.
Oh, yes. And also, okay.
Billy Lemon. I also just finished my 4th step in ACA and have never felt more honest about who I am. Thank you for sharing that, Billy.
Thank you. Yes.
Billy, if you're still listening and you're willing, I would love to hear more about. Oh, Billy, you are magic too. I'd love to hear about what about it felt so honest. Like what about it? I guess felt different.
Hey, so something that we like. I am going to suggest today. Halfway through, like when I was interviewed for a podcast a while back, halfway through, you don't have to do that.
Well,
stop taking my inventory, okay? No, hey, if you have an opportunity, when you check out our podcast, make sure you give us a review.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. So, can we take a moment? Actually,
yeah, let's take a moment.
First off, I want to thank all of our viewers. So, occasionally we look at our stats. Occasionally we'll get messages and stuff like that.
Every day, every other hour.
Yeah. Well, that's partially true. So I can get pretty obsessive. But so first off, I want to just thank everyone. Like we know a lot. We have viewers all over the world, all over different countries. We want to thank you for listening. People who have been with us for such a long time, thank you for being such great supporters of the podcast. And, new viewers and listeners, thank you so much. We don't get paid to do this. We do this out of the kindness and love of our heart. And it means a lot to us that we're reaching out to other people and that people might want to listen to the things that we have to say. So just a big thank you to everyone. We really do love you. Aw, thank you, Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Oh,
Stephanie.
Okay, where were we?
We were deep in.
I'd
done my whole analogy and everything about the wreckage and all that good stuff.
That was really nice. I really do appreciate that. So self-pity empowering. So I wanted to talk about that too. So I heard that this was a meeting I went to during COVID times.
Yeah.
There was this guy in New York. I don't remember his name, but he was talking about the 4th step and I love the way he described it. Mm-hmm. So what he was saying is we do this 4th step. And for the longest time, we were controlled by these situations. Mm-hmm. And what the 4th step does is it gives us that control back.
Absolutely.
Right? Because as long as we're blaming people, places, and things, as long as we're telling ourselves stories about things that have happened, right? Those things control us, they make us angry, they influence the decisions we make, right? And so we're essentially controlled by those things. And what the 4th step does is if we, like I've said a million times, if we distill it to its simplest parts, it gives us the thing that belongs to us and the thing that we can work on.
I used to always say it's they weren't at one point I was really trying to be mindful about the language I was using. So I wasn't using good or bad. I was using maybe high or low. So they weren't my highest choices, but they were my choices. And in that experience, I was empowered, because I was thinking, and it helped me to kind of come to terms with this idea that I had a part in stuff. It's like I made a choice. It was the best choice at the time that I could possibly make. And that I get to hold on and not punish myself for making that choice.
Right. Thank you for saying that. So what I was thinking of is a lot of times, maybe all the time, when we look at when we're taking a personal inventory, and I want to kind of pull away from the steps just to make this kind of more generalizable.
Absolutely.
When we look at, and by we, I should referring to myself, when I look at these different things that I was doing, like either I was like popping off, or I was angry, or I was jealous, or I was whatever, I was making other people my higher power, like all of those behaviors, I was doing the very best I could. Like I was raised a certain way, I had certain experiences, and in the end, like that's what I was doing. In the end, like those behaviors that were not serving me at one point did serve me.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe it was like, if there was self-pity, maybe what was happening is like that self-pity was pulling me away from people, places, and things that were harmful for me. Right. Or if I was angry, maybe what was happening is like I was creating a space, or I was having a reaction in order to protect myself. Exactly. Right. In the end, I like to look at all of my character defects as like old ways that I was protecting myself, that I was taking care of myself. And what makes them defects is that they have stopped working. And how do I know that they've stopped working? Because they're causing me pain.
Yeah. And what do we really call defects? And these are attributes that have gone awry,
Right. And so one of the beautiful things that I like that they say in the big book is that, a lot of what happens a lot of times for us is that, we have natural instincts, the desire for sex, the desire for companionship, the desire for success, right? And for many of us, what happens as addicts and alcoholics is that we take it too far sometimes. You know what I mean? Like we start stepping on people's toes, we start, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like that is when our behaviors have stopped serving us.
Absolutely.
That stopped serving us.
And the key is, and this is the gift, we figure out they stop working like drugs and alcohol, and we do something about it. Unfortunately, a lot of times we hold on to it and keep using the same tools, thinking that they're going to work again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know why I sighed so hard. I think I'm just like really excited about this topic.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's not as heavy as last week.
God, last week, generational trauma. Tune in. We'll have a sequel. Yes. We as an aside, we had to take a break because we both walked away from that conversation feeling like, oh my God, that was so much. We can't do another week of that.
Called my family and cursed them out. Like, no, I didn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So again, it's really hot in here. So for folks listening, if any comments, anything's coming up for you, please share with us. So I want to talk about how we have gone about addressing those behaviors, gone about addressing our character defects. Anything come up for you? You know what?
The one that I like to talk about, character assassination. Or gossip, however you want to put it.
Break it down for us.
Well, okay, so it showed up and it continues to show up. And this is where I give myself grace. I think it's important I had to become aware that I was doing it, because some things are so ingrained, like it's just a natural thing, like it rolls off your tongue. And I'm like a middle child. If anyone knows me, it's like I sit up at night thinking about what I'm going to say to some people. Like I've got like an arsenal or Rolodex of hate, like Bianca Del Rio. Give a shout out. And for me, what I did, like I have a fellow who is amazing, who just had an anniversary, and I had a conversation with him about this very thing. And one of the things that I did as a way of acknowledging, number one, that it's still an issue that I have, is not going to go away overnight, is I started to become mindful about who I did that with and where I did
gossiping.
That. Yeah, like if I was if I found myself doing that, and then I wasn't doing it in the presence of folks who didn't know me and knew that I was trying to make changes. And it over a period of time, I mean, I still do it, but I don't do it at the alarming rate that I was doing it before. And I think, like with any defects or character traits that need to kind of change, I think the key, for me, what's important is knowing that they're not going to change overnight. That it's just like any kind of behavior, you need to give it some time to go away,
Yeah, so this is where I feel like we have to come back to the steps, right? So the way the steps are designed is that we technically don't do anything.
Yeah.
What we do is we ask God to remove these defects of character.
Or higher power. Whatever.
Our higher power, right? So that's it. We humbly ask.
Mhm.
And then we live our lives as if, right? So
what I think, okay, so I agree.
Did you just say what?
No. I'm listening to that. I agree.
Yeah.
But we have to take some actions.
Of course.
We have to take some action, because it would be nice. It would be very nice to say, it would be almost like taking a pill and say, I want these to go away. Okay,
right.
Yeah. But, we take the action, and then I think maybe we say that, but I think maybe the action I'm thinking is that I become aware of the times when I'm acting on them.
So in the 12 and 12.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Act a fool.
Act a
fool, girl.
Is that Alexis Mateo?
Uh-huh. I love you got the reference.
I love Alexis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My heart of fellow Boricua. Okay. So, that was so amazing. I don't know why that. Act the fool, girl. Act the fool. That whole scene.
I know exactly.
That whole scene. I was living.
That was when.
I like when Tammy Brown is like, I'm acting. Okay.
Teleport to Mars.
Teleport. Okay, stop it. I totally lost where I was going. What was I talking about?
We're getting ready to debunk everything.
I wasn't debunking. I wasn't going to debunk. I was going to support what you said with the literature.
Okay.
So in the big book, no, it's actually in the 12 and 12. When we're talking about the fourth step, I think it was, or was it in no, it's in the 12 and 12. Basically, it says like God is not asking for us to be passive in this action, that we are not just children that like get to kind of just rely on our parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a call to be in relationship with a power that's greater than yourself, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
And it's through that relationship that we start to see those character defects lifted, and so there is action involved in there. And so some of the like suggestions that I got from my sponsors, like you take contrary action, right? So in a situation where you might get angry or gossip, in that moment, the work there is like, actually, no, you know what? I'm not going to gossip, right? Like just first thing, or in that situation where you might want to like assassinate someone's character, you're like, you know what? Instead, I'm going to choose to say something nice. That's actually something that's saved me and has actually transformed the way like I interact with people in general.
Do you remember that period where I was trying to change my environment at work, and I was like, I am not going to bring any negativity to that experience. And so I did that very thing. Like whenever I felt like I was going to go there, I would think instead something nice and positive about individuals.
Yeah. And to be sure, we are not advocating for like a toxic positivity,
No,
like
God,
we're not saying like,
well, I think
you have to put like glitter on bullshit.
No, this is where the beauty and the wisdom of the serenity prayer comes in. Knowing how to discern when I can do something and when I just need to step back and do nothing at all.
So for folks who may not have heard the serenity prayer, what is it?
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Right. I love that.
I know. It's
it's
very simple. Simple until you get to the second part.
Thy will, not mine, be done.
No. It's actually a longer prayer, and they excise the parts that are kind of like no.
Right, I get it. So yeah. So one of the ways that I've addressed my character defects is like, one, gosh, acknowledging that, like you said, they're not going to go away overnight. I am not doing this by myself. You know, I am turning things over. I am humbly asking God to remove these defects of character, you know?
Oh, we're talking about him too.
Oh, absolutely. Like just being real about shit that comes up. Oh,
exactly.
100%. 100%.
Because I think that like the one thing I thought was super amazing early recovery about the program is that I was able to be really honest and vulnerable about times when I was jealous. Like that was before, like, because it's not comfortable to have, you know, to acknowledge that you're jealous of something or that you have envy or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was empowering and kind of freeing to kind of say, oh, this is jealousy. It's rearing its ugly head, and it's got me by the cojones.
Very nice. What was I gonna say? Not cojones. What did you say? What did you say?
I didn't say
like the oh god. I can't. I'm losing
That's okay. It's all good. It's like,
yeah, it just threw me off. I like had a thought and I was like, did he just say that? Okay. All right. So taking contrary action, intention.
Yeah.
Right. So like one of the ways that I've addressed character defects is having intention. And sometimes, for example, if I'm going to enter into a space that is going to like I'm going to have some type of reaction. For example, I tell myself my intention is to go into this space and be kind.
Oh,
my intention is to go into this space and find the good in everyone. Or my intention is to go into this space and mind my own business, right? And that can sometimes.
Or my intention is to just love you from across the street.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, I can't be around you.
Yeah. And like, let's be real. Like, it's hard to be human sometimes, right? It's hard to like be in relationship with the other people.
It ain't easy being cheesy.
It ain't. Everyone's so creative. I love her. Do you know her name?
I don't know her name, but she's amazing.
I love her.
Funny.
Yeah,
she's so funny.
Everybody's so creative.
You know, it's bad when like you hear that. It's like, okay.
You're like, oh shit, are they about to boil chicken again?
Oh
God. God bless her. I forget her name.
She's a TikTok star, in case you're not familiar.
Yeah, let's not get too sidetracked. Okay. So it won't go down easy if it ain't cheesy.
Absolutely.
Okay, so contrary action, intention. I think the other thing is you were talking about like being honest about things that come up. The other thing about character defects is like being mindful of like people, places, and things that bring that shit out in you. You know, like sometimes it might be like, hey, I might be hanging out with the wrong people.
Oh, absolutely.
Or like, and it might be, maybe it's not I'm hanging out with the wrong people. It's like, I think I need to establish boundaries with these people, you know? So like a big one, let's talk about gossip for a second. Oh, yeah. So I don't like gossip. However, actually, let me be real. I kind of love gossip.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of love gossip. But I'm going to explain why I kind of love gossip. So when I was growing up, my mom is like the biggest chismosa. Like she would sit at the porch and she would look out the window and she was, oh my God, I can't, I'm not trashing her. This is just, oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry. My mom doesn't even watch this, but like, I don't want to speak like disparagingly of her. But what she would do is like, she would sit at the porch and she would look out the window or whatever. And like, when she would see me, she'd like, oh, you know what I saw? And like, you know what I mean? Like, so we would bond over gossip, right? And that was easy for us to bond over because we had nothing else in common. You know what I mean? Like when I say my mom, I mean my grandmother. My grandmother's in her 80s and I'm 38, right? So you imagine what that difference was when I was like younger. So something about gossip can make you feel like you're close to someone, right? It's also kind of intoxicating, right? Like it feels kind of like sneaky, or you know, it has like its allure. And the other thing is that like it's an easy way to bond with people.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So there are things about gossip that feel like pleasurable,
especially at work.
but so especially at work. But here's the problem. The problem is when that gossip has an adverse impact on you or on someone else. Right. So like sometimes it can be like, and I think we had an episode on gossip, right? And like, and like anthropological research has showed that like gossip was used as like it was a way of governing people, right? So like gossip inherently isn't negative. But it's so common, it can be easily become negative, and it can easily like impact people's lives, right?
We like to call our gossip now cares and concerns.
I need to get back to what my point was with the gossip. Oh, so there are things about gossip that are alluring and seductive, right? Now, what you were saying, like, I am very careful about who I'm gossiping with. For example, I'm not going to gossip with someone that doesn't know my heart.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm not like, that's something very kind of private. You know what I mean? Also, like, can I gossip? And what am I gossiping about? You know what I mean? Like, do I have a legitimate concern, or did I hear something that may or may not be true, and now I'm taking that and I'm telling other people that I don't know? You know what I mean? So there's that. But one of the things that I do though is if I'm in a situation and I hear people gossiping about someone in a way that feels like malicious, I remove myself from that situation.
Absolutely. And I think in hearing you say that, it's like I really feel like that's, over time, that's exactly how it's been. It's like it's not that I don't gossip, it's about what I talk about. Because if I feel like if it's something that will cause pain, if the person like found out, I'm not participating. And
right. So that's one of the things, is like one of the ways that I've addressed my character defects is like watching like who I'm hanging out with sometimes, or like what environments I'm putting myself in, right? Like if I know, for example, like in one environment, I'm like voluntarily putting myself in an environment that's going to be like super stressful and have me like all fucked up, I might not do that. Or if I do, I might bring a friend, like I might find other ways of like being in that.
Another really amazing thing that you can do is really have wonderful things going on in your life.
That's right.
Like really positive things that you can focus on. It's like, because when things are going really well in my life, I'm not that concerned, and I'm not concerned in the wrong way, because there's unhealthy ways to be concerned with other people's stuff, but I'm not concerned in unhealthy ways about what's going on with somebody else.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. So we're down to our last 4 minutes.
Ooh, right on. And are we waiting for something?
I think we are waiting for something. We will stall until Brandon puts it on the screen.
I know. It's like he gets a week off and he.
So the
Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBT recovery community.
You're just at the community. So